What's going on, everyone? So at the time of recording this video, we are 24 hours away from the end of the trade deadline, and hopefully the Lakers pull something off. Now, based on countless reports, Lakers have had conversations. They've worked with other teams. They have even reports that deals might be on the table for the Lakers, and hopefully some of that, if not all of it, is true. You know, whether the Lakers make one deal that gets several pieces or they make multiple deals that get several pieces, the Lakers really need to do something. This team just doesn't have it, and they're just falling flat, and we're sinking further and further back from potentially getting into the playoffs. I still think if we get into the playoffs, you trust LeBron James, trust Anthony Davis to lead the charge, and hopefully you can make some noise, but they need help. We need team longevity as well, because next season at this rate, we're going to have just another roster turnover, and we can't keep having that. So even if worst case, we don't make the playoffs or anything this season, it'd be nice to just at least get some pieces that we know, okay, this is our team for the next few seasons. Let's really try to build that chemistry. We have the rest of this season, we have a full off season, a full training camp, a full preseason, and maybe we can make some noise the following year or the year after. It's not even just about this year. Now, obviously, if you can win it this year, go win it this year, right? But it's not even just about this year. Hopefully we go, okay, well, this is our team. This is our roster. Maybe we can use a guy or two to upgrade or something, but for the most part, just kind of have the round pieces. So I wanted to kind of go over the highlighted trades, the trades that seem to have the most potential, kind of go over those, all the ones that are rumored, and break those down and give you my thoughts and opinions. And of course, I want to hear yours. So let's dive right into it because it is a lot. So right off the bat, Fred VanVleet, I just want to say, I really don't think we're going to get him. Now, the Toronto trade in general, I would love. Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., would be amazing, would give us our starting five for the next, 2-3 years beyond this year. And having Fred VanVleet, who I think might be a perfect complementary point guard next to LeBron, doesn't really need the ball, could shoot, play off the ball a lot, which he already does, play some solid defense. I mean, he's not a great defender, but he's serviceable. Give you that 3-and-D style point guard, get Gary Trent, guy that can score at all three levels, give you that 3-and-D shooting guard, and now you have your five lined up, right? You got Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. That would be nice. But the reality is there just seems to be too much competition for Fred VanVleet. The Lakers aren't going to sell the farm to acquire VanVleet. He's also going to want $30+ million, and you have teams like the Clippers, the Magic. You have multiple teams that want to go after. Minnesota is another team that has came on the radar for Fred VanVleet. All of these teams, we've already seen Minnesota will sell the farm to get a guy that they think, oh, this is the piece we need. Clippers, they don't care. Steve Ballmer, he'll pay the guy. He'll also give up whatever assets he needs to. The Clippers offered the most for even just Kyrie. So I could see them saying like, oh, we'll give you what you want for Fred VanVleet, especially because they really need a point guard. And then Orlando just has a treasure trove of stuff. So I just think Fred VanVleet realistically is probably not going to be an option, but maybe like I mentioned this yesterday, maybe you could work something out to where you get a piece from another team, right? If Toronto maybe doesn't really want a piece, or maybe you could give the asset. So like, for example, like Minnesota, like, yeah, maybe you can't get Fred VanVleet, but why would Toronto want D'Angelo Russell? Maybe you could get D'Lo, right? And so instead of Fred VanVleet, you land D'Lo, something along those lines. I'm not saying that will happen or that it could happen. I'm just throwing out suggestions, right? If you can't get Fred VanVleet, well, maybe you could get attached to that deal, get Gary Trent, and then, maybe get a piece from that other team that is sending out for the Fred VanVleet deal that makes sense for the Lakers. Like I said, a D'Lo. Now, Gary Trent, I do believe, is highly obtainable. We've gotten countless reports stating that he could even be had potentially for 2, maybe 3 second-round picks. If you could do a Rui Hachimura type deal, that would be beautiful. At the very least, get Gary Trent. If they don't do anything else, go get Gary Trent. He's going to help tremendously. He could be our starting shooting guard. Worst case, you could have Dennis Schroeder and Gary Trent Jr. as your front court. 3-and-D style, can score at all three levels. It can run the pick and roll, run the pick and pop. He's a guy that could really kind of take a lot of the scoring load off of LeBron, off of AD. It would help tremendously and give us a real shooting threat. But my hope is with Gary Trent is a separate deal. So we do, the Lakers did this deal and they ended up getting Gary Trent, right? So like, let's say you do like the Jazz deal, or you do the Hornets deal, or you do Spurs or whatever. And it's like, you got that deal. And we got Gary Trent for hopefully like a Rui Hachimura type. Like if you take Patrick Beverley, Lonnie Walker, and 3 second-round picks and go get Gary Trent Jr., do that. The beauty is, if the reports are true, Toronto hasn't gotten a ton of offers for Gary Trent. And a lot of that is, 1, he wants to be paid. 2, most of the good teams, and even the tanking teams, most of them have his position, or they have an abundance of his position, right? Like, so they don't really need a Gary Trent. And do they really need Gary Trent at like, $25 million? Probably not. Also, do you really want to pay that for, say, a sixth man, right? If Gary Trent was on, like, say, a 3-year deal, $15 million a year, I think he would have an abundance of suitors. Problem is, as people know, he's probably opting out of that $18 million next year, and he's going to want more, and we're going to have to sign him to a long-term deal. Great player, still very young, can do a lot, could really help a team, but again, the rebuilding teams, they already have guys that they're probably comfortable with, that are probably younger, that they want to grow and develop. And then the top tier teams, they all kind of have that position filled. Like Phoenix has Booker, Milwaukee, they have Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. The Celtics, they have a plethora of guys, right? Like the Warriors, like all of these teams already have that position filled, that position of need, Baines, guys like that. So Gary Trent is he's a great player. I'm sure every team in the league would love to have him, but it's just like, what is it going to cost? Is it worth it? And we have to pay him on top of that. Well, the Lakers are in a position where they don't have a starting shooting guard, really. It's Patrick Beverley. And it's like, okay, well, he'd be perfect. So let's go get him. So my hope is that we land Gary Trent and then something else, right? Obviously, if we can get Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent, perfect. Do that. But I think realistically, Fred VanVleet, we're probably not going to be able to get him, but just go get Gary Trent. Again, at the very least, get Gary Trent. But moving on, the Utah deal. So based on reports that came out today, Utah has an offer on the table for that trade from the Lakers. What that is, the report didn't say, but it said that they have an offer on the table. Now, per Shams, the Utah deal could be had for 1 first-round pick. If that's the case, beautiful. My ideal situation, the trade that I think I would love the most is go get the Utah deal, and if you can do it for 1 first, go get Gary Trent. If you can get Beasley, Conley, Vanderbilt, and then go get Gary Trent, I think you have one of the best rosters in the league with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, because now you have Beasley, who 3-and-D and has the most as up there as most made threes in the league this year. He's not number 1, but he's up there. He's I think top 5 if I'm not mistaken, or top 7, something like that. So he's a guy that's shooting an abundance of threes and making an abundance of threes. You have Vanderbilt, who is just a defensive monster. That guy is everywhere. Go watch him play. That guy, him and AD would be terrifying defensively. I would love to see it. Mike Conley is a very good, savvy, grit and grind type of point guard. Doesn't need the ball, plays off the ball a lot already, so he would fit in perfectly next to LeBron James. He's basically a grown-up Fred VanVleet, but with the experience, with the just the know-how, a great assist to turnover ratio, so he takes care of the ball. You don't have to worry about turnovers. He's a point guard that'll keep turnovers down, keep turnovers low. You could start him. You could bring him off the bench. I would ideally probably, so if you get Gary Trent and you get the Utah deal, I would probably bring Conley off the bench. I would probably go have LeBron play point guard. I know LeBron doesn't want to do it, but it's like, dude, we're not even making the playoffs right now. You need to get yourself you're going to have to play point guard, buddy. Hate to break it to you, right? And ideally, I would love to do a Beasley, Gary Trent, LeBron, Rui, and AD, right? Or you could go Vanderbilt and have Rui come off the bench. Either way, right? So you could go Vanderbilt or Rui, AD, LeBron, Beasley, Trent. Because you could get away with Vanderbilt because you'd have Beasley and you'd have Gary Trent, who could both knock down the three consistently and knock down at a good rate and clip. So you could make up for the lack of Vanderbilt's three-point shooting. So that I wouldn't mind. But again, you could go Rui too, however you want to go about it, right? And then your bench, now you have Mike Conley coming off the bench as a backup. I mean, you can bring him in certain matchups or, have him play alongside. But that would be my ideal. Gary Trent, Beasley as your starting backcourt. Then you have LeBron, AD, Rui, or Vanderbilt as your front court. Perfect. And then you'd still have, Rui or Vanderbilt off the bench with Mike Conley. Still have Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, Thomas Bryant, Wenyen Gabriel, like all of those. You're set. You're good. Now you're legit 10 deep and quality 10 deep. Dennis Schroeder is better off the bench anyway, and you can kind of limit his role more, so maybe he can be a little more effective. I just think the Utah deal might be one of the best deals on the table right now. And if you could do that and still get Gary Trent, home run. Absolutely do that. And Beasley, Trent, and Vanderbilt are all young enough to be pieces for the next several years. Like, you could have all three of those guys for the next 7-8 years, and they'd still all be in their prime. That's perfect. That's beautiful. That's what you want to see. So Utah would be amazing. Next up, some combination of the Hornets deal. Based on reports, again, Hornets and Lakers are still in discussions. They still have talked. Hornets want picks. Lakers don't really want to give up picks, and nor should they. If you're taking on Terry Rozier's long-term salary, and especially if you're taking on Gordon Hayward, then you shouldn't have to give up any first. Or if you do, it's like one first, but it's like top 15, top 20 protected. Like, it's just something crazy like that, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, we traded the first, but really we didn't. It was like, if it conveys, then it's basically we gave away a second. Something along those lines, right? But ideally, get some combination of Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, Kelly Oubre, PJ Washington. Or I wouldn't even mind, you throw in like a Lonnie Walker, Patrick Beverley, something along those lines, and maybe even get like a Plumlee, or you could do like Damian Jones and like JTA, something like that. And then so go like Russ, Damian Jones, JTA, and basically take everybody, right? PJ Washington, in my opinion, has to be a part of the deal. But let's say you went and got like Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, and you didn't have to give up any firsts, and then you took a first and you went and got Gary Trent, and you still have a first and to carry over into the next season, and then you have like Gordon Hayward's expiring deal next season with the first that you're going to get next year plus the first that you have right now that you can trade that can carry over. So now you got Gordon Hayward and 2 firsts. That might be something good. That might be something that actually helps and works out. Maybe you could find a deal that, okay, well, say a star or something like that wants that. Well, okay, cool. We can make this deal. We got 2 firsts. Something along those lines. But Terry Rozier, again, gives you that scorer at all 3 levels that the Lakers really need. He would be great. He's after the slow start to the season, he's really picked it up scoring-wise and efficiency-wise, and he's also shooting 40% from 3, so that'd be good. Gordon Hayward might be the best complementary player next to LeBron and AD if healthy. That's the big problem. The guy just cannot stay healthy. But when healthy, I mean, the dude is a Swiss Army knife, the ultimate Swiss Army knife. Can shoot, can pass, defend, run your offense, do whatever you need him to do. Hit the 3 ball, create and get it to his own spot, get to his shots. He'd be perfect. Could play the 2, play the 3, and you'd be off to the races. Kelly Oubre, he's a piece that would be added on, a sizable wing. He's averaging 20 a game, not the best 3-point shooter, but gives you some solid D, gives you some a guy that can just go get a bucket if you need him to, and it would just kind of be an add-on. If it doesn't work out, you can just kind of let him go. It's not a big deal, expiring, and then work it out from there. but I would want PJ Washington. And I know some people will look at it and go like, why would you want PJ Washington when you have Rui Hachimura? And it's like, well, you can't have enough 6'7", 6'8" wings. And also, PJ Washington, sooner or later, LeBron's going to retire or he's going to leave and go elsewhere, to go play with his son or whatever. And PJ Washington's young enough to where he could be a piece for now and the future. And so, like, when LeBron leaves, you could still have AD, PJ Washington, and Rui Hachimura. And now you have your front court locked up. Maybe you have, Terry Rozier still and, say, like a Gary Trent, right? There you go. Or maybe Max Christie evolves into that guy. And now you have Max Christie, right? So now you got at least 4. And now you're just looking for a point guard and then rounding out your depth. Just options, right? And it's about this deal. This package to me is more about getting size and getting depth. That's why I really like the Hornets deal. I think the Hornets deal is a great move because it really does get you some quality size and get you some quality depth, get you a guy that can score at all 3 levels, which the Lakers desperately need. And just, I think it's a very good deal in my opinion. I think this is a deal that makes a lot of sense for the Lakers. But what does it cost? Again, it shouldn't cost you any first round picks. And also, if you do decide to make this move and you do decide to get this deal, in my opinion, you got to get PJ Washington. You got to. But moving on, Spurs deal. So Spurs, I don't think is bad at all. I like the Spurs deal a lot. Because one, you get a center in Jakob Poeltl that, though he would prefer to start, he's a guy that knows what it takes to come off the bench, and maybe you could start him next season, right? I don't think you'd bring Jakob Poeltl in, and I think in certain matchups, right, you're playing the Joker, you're playing Embiid, yes, Jakob Poeltl's that guy with size, right? Great playmaker, great passer, great low post threat, not a great shooter. My concern with bringing another center in is AD just cannot shoot this year, and so if that's the case, then it can be very clunky and very bad, which is my concern, right? Because now you have AD who's been dominant at the center spot, although AD wants to play the 4, so Jakob Poeltl could help with that. Don't mind it. Not just that, but a lot of teams seem to want Jakob Poeltl. It's just hard because his salary is like $9 million. So if you could go and get him and then sign him to a reasonable deal, you don't want to sign him to something like $30 million a year, but you get him at, $18 million a year. Now that's a reasonable contract that could actually get you a return later if you need it to be. Jakob Poeltl would be nice off the bench. You could start, you could do whatever, you'd have some nice flexibility. Josh Richardson could be our KCP type player. A lot of people forget KCP wasn't KCP until he came to the Lakers. Not the KCP we know. We molded him into that guy. And so Josh Richardson could be a guy that I think could give you 3-and-D style, could be your starting shooting guard. I wouldn't mind, let's say we can't get Gary Trent. Or let's say we do the Raptors deal and we do get, Fred VanVleet or whatever. I wouldn't mind just trading Patrick Beverley for Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson, he's still young, 30 years old. He's a guy that can come off the bench, he can start. He's got good size, good length, 3-and-D. I think he would be a solid acquisition. He's not he's not a guy that's gonna blow you away. But we don't really need that. We need guys that can play and hustle and play some solid defense, have some good length. He has a 6'11" or 7-foot wingspan, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got good length. So you'd have 4 guys on the court that all have a 7-foot wingspan. That's pretty good. I really like that. I really like the idea of these guys. And then Doug McDermott would give you that kind of sniper off the bench. But the biggest reason I think the Spurs deal makes a lot of sense is you get a trade exception. Now, you could do one of two things. You could either get 2 of these guys and get a massive trade exception, or you could get all 3 of these guys and you'd still get a $14 million trade exception. So then you could use that trade exception to go get another piece if you needed to, whether it's this season or the off season or whatever may come, right? So I would love to see something along the lines of the Spurs deal if all else fails. The other trades I mentioned before this deal, I think I'd rather prefer, and they may even be cheaper than the Spurs deal. Because you know Pop's going to want to gut us. You know he's going to want both first. Maybe he settles for one first. But, you know, the asking price on these guys is pretty high. Although Josh Richardson has been reported to be able to be had for a second. So you figure Doug is worth a second. Josh Richardson's worth a second. Okay, let's say Jakob Poeltl is worth the first. If you could do a first in like maybe 1 second for these three guys, I think you do it. You'd still have another first with Patrick Beverley, Lonnie Walker. Maybe go get, Gary Trent. As you can tell, I really want Gary Trent. But, regardless, however you feel about it, I don't mind the Spurs deal. Not my favorite deal, but I think it's a solid deal that gives us some flexibility, gives us some versatility. The Pistons deal. Now, I think the Pistons deal, now we're starting to get in the deals that I think are less and less likely. Personally, I think that Detroit would be, you can make an argument, Detroit might has the best opportunity to make us a bona fide contender right now. Bojan and Alec Burks are both shooting like 43%. I think Alec Burks shooting like 45% on like good volume, right? So we get two dead-eye shooters. You'd get a 3-and-D veteran in Alec Burks, who's always been very solid. Then you'd have Bojan Bogdanovic, who can just shoot the lights out, right? That would be helpful. Play both forward spots, gives you some flexibility. And then you'd get like, I would love a Saddiq Bey. I don't think you'd get Saddiq Bey in the deal, but you get an Nerlens Noel, get a shot blocking big. That could really help. Play next to AD, play behind AD, however you need to give you some shot blocking. Thomas Bryant could still play next to either of these because his ability to stretch the floor gives you some nice flexibility. And I just think these two shooting guys would really help. Really help. Again, this is a trade that I think one, it would cost both first, and I don't think the Lakers are going to give up both first for this deal. Two, I don't think it's the most viable. I think that there's other options that the Lakers could potentially work out, in my opinion. But I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind this deal. I wouldn't mind this trade if it can get done. And then lastly is the Orlando trade. Orlando wouldn't be bad at all. You get two dead-eye shooters and Terrence Ross, Gary Harris, two guys that can create, play off the ball, but also get their own shots. You get Mo Bamba, a young defensive 3-and-D center that we could really have next to AD for the foreseeable future, or even replace AD. Not just that, but Mo Bamba, if you look at his per 36, they're almost exactly the same as Miles Turner. So many people wanted Miles Turner. Mo Bamba is basically a younger Miles Turner that you could grow and develop. That would be beautiful. So time will tell. Again, I'm sure something will end up happening. I really think the Lakers get some deal done, but these are most likely the deals, in my opinion, that in kind of in the order in which I don't think Orlando. I think Gary Harris and Terrence Ross, I think we may be able to have them. But what's the cost? Like, you're not trading a first for either of those guys. I don't know if they would give us Mo Bamba, but I wouldn't mind a first for all three of these guys. I think that would be pretty good. But anyway, again, love to hear your thoughts and opinions, however you feel. Let me know. Would you want to do in these trades? Which trade do you like the most? Let me know down in the comments below.